Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Viper Strike 95, and today we're here with another game day flight. And this one's a bit of a long one today, but we got a very special event here today, of course. We're going to be covering the 2026 NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. And we are flying from San Antonio to LaGuardia Airport in the Big Apple today. Because of course the game is going to be going back to New York for Game 3. Plus, it is quicker to go from San Antonio to New York. So that is why we're doing this. But before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in the chat. I hope you're all doing well here today. And all the lurkers, I hope you're all doing well here today. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone. So this flight, by the way, we're going to take the Boeing 777 freighter today. I know it's technically maybe a bit too large at LaGuardia, of course. But I think we're going to do some pretty fun flying, of course. So. So that is what we're going to do today. So pretty simple flight. Pertaining to 777 freighter, we're going to do some cargo and transport some supplies and gear over for the NBA Finals. So we're going to be doing that. So let's get this thing started. So big stuff going on. We're going to be climbing up to, according to our flight plan, we will be going up to 35,000 feet for this flight. I know it's an hour-long airliner flight, but I wanted to do the NBA Finals since we never covered the NBA on this channel before. Hey, we got a raid from Airliners Live. Holy crap! Airliners Live. I did not expect seeing you guys. 139 people. Surly Dev. Oh, Surly, thank you, guys. Airliners Live and viewers, this is Viper Strike 95. We're doing a special airliner flight here today. We don't usually mainly do airliner flights very often, but we're doing the NBA Finals for this year between the Spurs and Knicks today. So I've been streaming here since 2021. I've been doing tons of flight sim content over the years, of course. I've done around the world flights, general aviation, and more. But thank you, Sir Dev. I didn't think you would ever send viewers to me. Really appreciate it. So, guys, I hope you're all having a good day. Airliners Live, I hope you had a really nice stream. I think you were doing some in real life plane spotting in Manchester, if I were to guess. Where you and your guys are at here today. So we're going to go ahead and prepare ETG. And for the navigation, we're going to do RNAV X22, AROD. I have to redo the entire thing all over again. Crap. So, I apologize if I'm looking in the chat. I just want to make sure I get this right, these flight plans. So, welcome on in, Quartz. Good to see all you guys here as well. So, if you guys have any questions, you just ask me. As well. So. Oh, nice. NBA 2K26. Definitely very nice for you. Sorry if I'm not paying attention to the chat. I'm just trying to make sure this is. So. There you go. They got fixed. I don't know who's playing tonight. It is the Spurs and Knicks are playing the NBA Finals tonight. The Knicks have already taken game 1 Wednesday night. They beat Wemby and the Spurs, of course, by 10 points. But yeah, the Knicks have been very impressive all playoffs, of course. They only lost 2 games all postseason. And that was in the first round against the Hawks. They swept the last 2 previous rounds in the Eastern Conference, and it was not even close. The Knicks dominated the East, and then of course we all know the Spurs in the West had a great playoff run. They've had an unbelievable playoff run throughout all of the postseason. I mean, to even get in this year's final, of course, they had to get past, of course, the defending champs Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. They beat them in 7 games, which was definitely a tough feat. They beat the Timberwolves and they beat the Blazers easily. They beat the Blazers in 5, and then they beat the Wolves at 6. So very tough matchups, of course, for the Spurs. It was definitely a much more difficult road for San Antonio, but they beat the defending champs. So As for me, of course, if I had to pick the finals, I think I have the Knicks in 7. I just think the Knicks match up much better against the Spurs than the Thunder did. Their players, I think, match up a lot better. Like, Cat's going to be a matchup problem. Brunson's going to be really good. And I just think the Knicks have such great depth that I think they'll probably be able to get things done. Plus, I also think the Knicks have more to prove, too, this season. So, is Canada getting a new team next year? I heard rumors about the NBA used to have a second Canadian team back in the 90s. It was the Grizzlies, if you recall. The Vancouver Grizzlies used to play in the 90s. I think there is talks of potentially going to Canada again, but I just do not see it likely to happen because it's because, well, what happened with Vancouver failed because the Grizzlies, unfortunately, during the 90s in Canada, from what I was able to read up, there was a major economic recession in the 90s in Canada, and that really hurt the Grizzlies. Plus, they could never really get any stars. I think there was a video out there that explained why the Grizzlies failed, but a lot of things was weak Canadian dollar. The team really struggled. The Euro expansion rules made rebuilding very difficult. Bad draft missteps and reluctance from players to play in Vancouver, and ownership was why the Grizzlies struggled in the 90s. I don't think Vancouver's going to get much for the NBA. That being said, I've actually heard Vancouver is looking to get into Major League Baseball, actually. Now, I think that was the rumor you're thinking about, is Vancouver could very well get a MLB franchise in the future. And I think it would be interesting to see Major League Baseball go to Vancouver. I mean, it would be interesting that Canada would finally get a second team in Canada. Plus, I think there's potential for a pretty fun rivalry with Seattle. Seattle's famous for the MLB for not really having very many regional rivals, because it's technically been since 1977 the only team up in the Pacific Northwest. So Vancouver having an MLB team could unite Canada for the western half of Canada. Would be a very interesting thing to happen, though. That being said, I think if I had to pick Major League Baseball expansion, I think a team in Nashville, Charlotte make more sense. The Southern U.S. is very fastly growing markets, and it's grown a lot since the Braves went to Atlanta in the 60s. Things have changed a lot. Nashville and Charlotte have both grown immensely as cities. And I think they would be probably more suitable for baseball. No, I don't blame you. A second Canadian team would be pretty nice to have. Though the NBA has officially said their next expansions is going to be Seattle and Las Vegas, which makes sense. Seattle had lost their team previously, and now with their arena issues resolved, they're definitely more deserving to get a team back. The Sonics should have never left Seattle to begin with. And honestly, Vegas, obviously, again, it's a booming market. Now that teams are back in Las Vegas, being able to play, they can have their own teams back. So yeah, lots of things going on here. We got plenty of notes here too for today. So we're going to climb out of here. We're going to get into vectors. So, yeah, the Vegas Aces. Yeah, previously the only basketball team is really either UNLV or the WNBA's Vegas Aces, who are really good, though. They're a really great women's team. Incredibly successful. So here we go, guys. We depart the beautiful city of San Antonio as we say goodbye to San Antonio International Airport. So we're going to go ahead and move on to here, of course, as we head up to 35,000 feet. So if you guys are new to my channel, I have my slideshows and stuff available, and we mainly just do a lot of the notes from the NBA Finals, of course. And of course, we talk about the history of the finals. We also got the Spurs and Knicks to talk about too, their team histories and all that. Lots of stuff going through. A girl who dunks. Now, of course, there has been a few players who dunked in WNBA games. It's pretty rare because the court height is the same for men and women's. But the player who's dunked them, but there have been 8 different players who've actually dunked in a WNBA game, and the player who's dunked the most is, of course, Brittany Griner. She dunked 27 of the 27 dunks of the 38. Dunks are not very common. That's probably what it is, Court. So, I'll turn those on. So, we're getting ready to climb it to 37,000 feet for this trip. So, if you guys weren't aware about San Antonio, of course, the city itself, San Antonio is one of the largest cities in the state of Texas. It's actually the 7th most populous city in the country. A lot of people don't realize that this is one of our nation's most populous cities, and it's the 2nd most populous city in all of Texas. Only Houston has more people than San Antonio does. And it's actually a very old city too, dating back to 1718. It is actually a very old city too. It's actually the oldest Charles settlement in present-day Texas. And of course, anyone that's been around San Antonio should probably know that the city is most famous for being where you can find the Alamo and the San Antonio Missions National Historical Park, which contain a lot of different historical missions and stuff, and they're part of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 2015. Other attractions include the major Riverwalk, the Tower of the Americas, SeaWorld San Antonio, Six Flags Fiesta Texas, and the Alamo Bowl are some of the major attractions here in the city. It's also a major military city because it hosts several U.S. Armed Forces facilities, most notably Fort Sam Houston, and the 2 major air bases of Lackland and Randolph Air Force bases, which are pretty sizable military facilities, of course. So, very cool stuff. San Antonio is really neat. My mom wants to visit San Antonio. She said that's the place in Texas she wants to visit the most is San Antonio. And I definitely don't disagree with her on that one. It's a really cool city, rich history. There's tons of attractions to do and stuff. Really cool stuff. But yeah, games get me back into other sports and racing. Yeah. Yeah, Shaq, inside the NBA is pretty funny. Shaq, Charles Barkley, that's like some of the best sports commentary on TV. You gotta think about it. Huge stuff. Yeah, I've been starting playing other games too to not get burnt out with Flight Sim. So I've been playing the Hunter Call of the Wild. That's what I've been mainly doing when I'm not flying. Oh yeah, the new F1 game. Speaking of F1 ports, the F1 game just got its 2026 DLC released, I think earlier in the week. Which is the 2026 season pack. Which features it adds the new teams of Audi and Cadillac, new driver lineups, a new track, and new cars and regulations. So yeah, they brought the new Formula One track. And speaking of Formula One, um, we're also going to get the Monaco Grand Prix this Sunday, by the way. We got Monaco Grand Prix. Can you guys believe we're going to be in Monaco this week for the Grand Prix? Which, if you guys don't know about Monaco Grand Prix, it is probably one of the most famous automobile races in the world. And it's one of the three events that form the Triple Crown of motorsports, along with the Indy 500 here in my home state's capital, Indianapolis, and the 24-hour Le Mans in France. And of course, it's pretty tight. I mean, it's within the streets of Monaco. Very tight, lots of elevation changes, tight corners, and the tunnel makes it a very demanding circuit. It's a very tough circuit. It may not go as fast on some of the other circuits, but man, Monaco is a very tough one to master. That's for sure. So it is the hardest track. It's not even close. Yeah, it is a very, very difficult track. Trust me. Now imagine doing this in some of the earlier cars in the old days. It's a tough track even nowadays. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, those cars did not know what safety really was. Um, they didn't know what safety was. Like, they didn't have modern safety systems and all that. They didn't have cockpits that are safe. Of course, a lot of them crashed. So, no, they still race Monaco. It's a traditional track. You don't get rid of it. Like, it's one of those traditional tracks they do not get rid of. I'm serious. It's been pretty much uninterrupted. It's pretty much been always been raced since 1929. It's always been there. Of course, I know recent years it's not been nearly as exciting because, of course, with all the cars being bigger and stuff, it's made it a lot more dull. So, but yeah, the history's huge. I mean, there's so many things in that track, so much history into it. I mean, especially just 2 years ago, Charles Leclerc um, became the first Monegasque to win a race since 1931, which is a big deal for the people of Monaco to have one of their very own win a race. But yeah, very big stuff though. I know this year, of course, I'm mainly cheering for Team Cadillac. I know it's been a pretty tough season for them. They still haven't got a point yet, along with Aston Martin are still the only two teams without a point. But for being a new first-time drivers, they're actually not doing very badly at all. In fact, they're not doing that badly at all in terms of the race results. They're not actually doing that bad. And then, for example, the Canada Grand Prix, which was the last one we've had, Bottas actually finished the race where guys like Russell, Norris, Alonso didn't actually finish. He still finished despite all of it and all that. Like, there are times that both of them have finished and stuff. So I get it's a new team, but it's definitely not doing too bad for being a first time. So So we're about to arrive into Houston Intercontinental Airport, IAH. We're about to get into Houston, which is the largest city in the state of Texas. And just like San Antonio, they do have their own NBA team, the Rockets. The two-time champion Houston Rockets, of course. Very successful team, especially during the 80s and 90s were especially successful. With guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, more recent times, you have guys like Tracy McGrady, the Chinese Yao Ming, the Chinese basketballer Yao Ming, and then the modern days with James Harden and all that. But I guess we'll get ready to talk about all that too. We're good around 508 knots, so we're doing pretty good here. Yes, I'm in my Virtual Airlines livery, the Firefly Air. This is Tuto Murphy's virtual airline, by the way. FFA, of course, is Murphy's virtual airline. We're the largest virtual airline on FS Hub. And if you want to know how big our network is and how big it is, Firefly Air has around over 1,000 members, almost 1,200 members in Firefly Air, which is absolutely insane. We have a massive airline. And I'm one of the admins for it, by the way, so I'm definitely a major part of it. So, got quite a bit of a long flight to go, but so quite a bit of stuff going on here. So once we reach 35,000 feet, we'll begin to start talking about the NBA Finals. I got my notes for today for each of the finals, and we'll talk about that. So in terms of other news, before we get started with it, I do want to talk about some flights of news I want to cover here. So there's a couple of news. One of the ones I'm very excited for, there's a new biz jet. I know we had the incredible Phenom 300 that Rao and FS Reborn made, but there's going to be another interesting new biz jet. The Skyward Civilization Cessna 680 Sovereign, which is another business jet. And apparently it's supposed to be a really well done business jet. It sounds more closer to a PNG airliner than it is a normal biz jet. Including fully custom G5000 avionics, built all of it from scratch. Electrical architecture is where a lot of people put a lot of stuff. Nearly 60 buses, 600 circuits as well. Of course, they did a lot of activity, EFBs and stuff as well, and they said it's coming out for around $29 US. But yeah, another business jet. We're getting a lot of really interesting business jets now in the sim. Of course, AnyBuilds has just teased their A380. So yes, we're going to get the AnyBuilds A380 into the sim, which is going to be crazy. They already got the A340, A350, and the TriStar, but now they're going to bring in the big boy, the A380, an absolutely insane aircraft. It's the largest airliner ever built. I know we already have a free A380 in the sim already with the fly-by-wire, but it should be interesting to see how well AnyBuilds do with their version of it, because I'm actually very curious to see how can they replicate it for the new A380. I'm quite interested to see how that actually turns out. I'm not really an Airbus pilot. I'm mainly with the Boeing stuff, not with Airbus. So we're about to plummet into 35,000 feet. So we've finally reached our max altitude for today. So we're gonna go with, hey Shaq, good to see you. I hope you're doing well, my dude. We're doing the game day flight from San Antonio to New York LaGuardia. Quite a bit of a flight. Decided to take something a bit more powerful than just your normal 737. So I took the 777 freighter for today. So we just reached max altitude in the freighter. So we're going to be, I got my notes here for today. So I decided, I think it's time to bring out some of my notes. So this is the game day flights for today. I've always carried these notes for every single game day flight. So here it is, guys. The NBA Finals, if you guys weren't aware about it, of course. The finals are a big part of the NBA. It's basically their final competition. It's the championship series for the National Basketball Association between the champions of the Eastern and Western Conference in a best-of-7 series. And the winner is awarded the Larry O'Brien Championship Trophy. Of course, this finals has been around since 1947. It originally was the BA Final, the Basketball Association of America, but then when it merged with the National Basketball League to form the NBA. And of course, it's played in that ever since. The NBA Finals, a total of 21 different franchises have won the NBA Finals. Most recent have been the Oklahoma City Thunder, who won their first title since relocating to OKC, and their second overall title because they won one in 1979 as the Seattle Supersonics. So it's been going on for years, of course. But I briefly do want, but it's very interesting about the finals, of course. In terms of the NBA franchises with the most titles and the ones who've been the most successful franchise, the most successful NBA franchise in total of rings is the Boston Celtics, with 18 have won the most NBA titles. Then, of course, it's then the Lakers with 17, then the Warriors with 7, the Bulls with 6, and the Spurs at 5. The Spurs are the 5th most successful team in NBA history in terms of finals victories, which is pretty nice to think about it. Very interesting to learn, of course, all of it. So the history of the finals dates back to the origins of professional basketball. And the Marlins have been dominated by the Minneapolis Lakers, who won 5 of the first 10 titles during the original era, were won by the Minneapolis Lakers, who now become the Los Angeles Lakers. And then also the Philadelphia Warriors have also won multiple championships as well, including the original title in 1947 and another in 56. To bookend the first decade of the NBA. And the reason why the Lakers were so successful in the finals was because, of course, they had an incredible amount of talent, including Mr. Basketball, George Mikan, who is absolutely back in the old days, 6'10", he was absolutely massive. He was the pioneer of the NBA big man. 6'10", very good rebounder, shot blocker, and he could shoot all over his defenders with his hook shots. Changed the game forever. And he used the underhanded free throw technique too. He was absolutely huge, of course. Massive guy, and he was also the one who founded another one of the NBA's bigger rules, the goaltending rule, the widening at the foul lane, and he also created the NBA shot clock. Yes, he created the shot clock. How crazy is that he's influenced the game this much with his rules? Because he dominated the league. In 1951, of course, the Rochester Royals, who later became the Sacramento Kings, defeated the New York Knicks in the only finals contested by two teams from the same state. Yes, because Rochester's in New York. And of course, this was the first of the three final losses for the New York Knicks. And the Lakers won 3 straight in 1952 to 1954 to become the first team in NBA history to repeat. To three-peat. And of course, it was definitely a pretty notable moment. Then in the 50s and 60s, however, the late 50s and 60s were completely dominated by one NBA franchise, the Boston Celtics. And they're the other most successful team, and winning 11 of the 12 NBA finals they reached during 13 seasons. 1957, then they won 1969 to 1966. And they've won 8 straight there, and then they won 2 more in 1968 and 69, including 8 straight titles from 1959 to 1966, which is an unbelievable dynasty, one of the greatest dynasties in sports. And a lot of it was due to the fact that the Boston Celtics during that time was stacked, most notably with their legendary center, Bill Russell, who won 11 rings during his time in Boston. 11 championships, which is absolutely insane. But he was more than just a great player. Mr. Russell, of course, just changed the game. He was one of the most influential players in NBA history. He won NCAA Most Outstanding Player. He captained a gold medal U.S. national team during the Summer Olympics. He won NCAA championship, becoming one of only 8 players in NBA in history of men's basketball to achieve the Triple Crown of basketball. And he was so influential that Bill Russell actually has his number retired across all of the NBA. Yes, Bill Russell's legendary 6 is retired by every single team in the league. That's right. He, not guys like Michael Jordan and all that, are the only players who got his number retired by all the teams, because he was also big for the civil rights movement too. So a pretty special guy. But I mean, the Celtics team were absolutely stacked during the 50s and 60s. In terms of the 70s, of course, this one has a lot more parity this time, as 10 different teams reached the finals and 8 different teams won a championship in the 70s, the most of any decade. The only teams who won more than once, of course, was the Celtics and Knicks. The 70s featured the Knicks and Lakers, major classic game with Jerry West. Hit a basket from 60 feet to tie a game, which was one of the most famous ever. However, the Knicks won in overtime and won the series in 7 games in 1970. Absolute stacked talents, of course. The Lakers also, but of course the late 70s were very well known for breakthrough of a lot of the team's Western franchises. Of course, this included teams such as the Golden State Warriors, who moved from Philadelphia and swept the Washington Bullets, who are now the Wizards, in the 1975 finals. The Suns, after 8 years, made it to NBA Finals, only before losing to the Celtics in the final, of course, in Game 6. And then other franchises who won their first titles include the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971, with a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Trailblazers in Portland in 1977, and the Washington Bullets, who defeated the Sonics in 1978, who were led by a certain U of L basketball player, Louisville basketball star, Wes Unseld. And of course, in 79 was the Seattle Supersonics, led of course by the 1980s. Then when we get to the 1980s, we obviously got the rivalry with, this one was a decade of one of the NBA's greatest rivalry in NBA history, the Celtics and Lakers. The 80s was a very special decade for these two franchises. After all, they both got generational talents. The Lakers, of course, had Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then you teaming up with James Worthy on fast breaks. They became the Showtime Lakers. That also included guys like Michael Cooper, Byron Scott, Bob McAdoo, and more. And then, of course, you have the Celtics with their big three. Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and, of course, the kid out of French Lick, Indiana, Larry Bird. These two franchises had met in the finals. They met for the finals in 1984, 85, and 87. And some of those were some of the greatest NBA finals of all time. In 1984, the Celtics topped the Lakers 4-3 in 7 games, and it was the largest ever TV audience for an NBA game, with only the 1979 Conference Championship game being having an even larger audience. Of course, in 1985, they faced off in 85 and 87, but the Lakers came up on top both times, winning in 6 games, despite each time losing game 1. As well. And of course, there are so many incredible talents, obviously. However, in the later era, of course, the Celtics could not reach the finals the next 2 seasons because the Pistons have overshadowed them. But the Lakers defended their title in 1988 against Detroit. But the Pistons, however, got revenge next year as the Bad Boys won with a sweep to win their first NBA title, with the Bad Boys with their physicality, which included guys like Joe DeMars, Indiana's own Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, and went back-to-back the next year against the Blazers. Now, of course, all you 90s kids and have grown up in the 90s, let me tell you something about the 90s. The 90s was marked mainly by the supremacy of the Chicago Bulls. They were led by, of course, the legendary head coach of Phil Jackson, who we'll get to know him also as a Lakers head coach. And, of course, who could forget about the duo they had in Chicago? Of course, you can't have Bulls without Michael Jordan on the list. The legendary Michael Jordan, many people consider him to be the GOAT. And the other one is Scottie Pippen, an amazing player in his own right. Won 6 titles and 6 appearances from 1991 to 1998. The other 2 franchises who won a title in this decade were the Houston Rockets, who won in back-to-back years in 1994-95, and the Spurs in 1999, which was their very first championship, by the way. But very important, though, it was a big-time thing as well. Then, following Jordan's departure, due to the fact he chose baseball, the Rockets took full advantage of it and won the 1994 and 95 NBA titles, as Hakeem Olajuwon, the Dream, became the only player in NBA history to win the NBA MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP in the same season. And then once Jordan returned back from baseball, of course, he won another three-peat in 1996, 97, and 98. Now, the 2000s, the next decade, were largely dominated by the Spurs and Lakers, who appeared to combine 11 finals to win 9 championships in 12 seasons by both teams. The Lakers during that time, the Spurs in the 2000s were an incredibly well-built team. They got guys with veterans like David Robinson and younger talent like Tim Duncan, but also some very underrated players we'll get to talk about. Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Bruce Bowden, and more. helped won multiple NBA titles. The Lakers were also dominant as well because they got guys, mainly the duo of Shaq and Kobe, which was absolutely ridiculous to think about nowadays about Shaq and Kobe. Shaq was virtually unstoppable. You're gonna have to try and foul him because you can't deal with Shaq, and Kobe's a scoring machine. Enough said. The other teams that have won the NBA Finals in the 2000s were mainly the Heat, winning in 2006. The Pistons won a title in 2004. And of course, in 2008 was the Celtics, having won it with their super team of their big three: Ray Allen, KG, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce. And then, of course, Kobe managed to win 2 more titles at the end of the decade. Then we have the 2010s, which of course was the continued excellence of a LeBron James, one of the other greats. LeBron, and of course, who appeared in 9 finals in 10 seasons, and he won 4 of them. And he did it all by playing for 3 different franchises. And the decade also saw the ascent of the Golden State Warriors, who won 4 titles in 8 seasons during their time in the 2010s. Of course, 2010 was the most well-known thing. The decision happened, and the Heat and LeBron got to join D. Wade and Chris Bosh to form their big 3 in Miami. But crazy enough, though, in 2011, they didn't even win the finals in 2011, as crazy as people thought. That's because the Mavericks won the title in 6 games, led by Dirk Nowitzki, the greatest Maverick of all time. Though they did win titles against the Oklahoma City the next season, then they repeated in 2013 over the Spurs. And then in 2014, San Antonio won in 5 games to give Tim Duncan his 5th and final title for Mr. Tim Duncan. Then in 2014, LeBron returned back to Cleveland to team up with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And the Cavaliers appeared in the next 4 finals against the Warriors, building the NBA's next great rivalry. The Warriors won in 2015 as they won the series in 6 games. However, the next season may be one of the greatest NBA finals of all time, as the Cavs were down 3-1 against the Warriors in the finals, but James and Irving led to 2 straight victories to force the Game 7. And Game 7, of course, was one of the greatest games in NBA history, featuring one of the greatest moments in NBA Finals history, the block, when LeBron James blocked the shot from Andre Iguodala. And combine that with an incredible performance, LeBron James brought his hometown city an NBA title, which is one of the greatest things ever. Then the Warriors next year won the NBA title in 2017, and then they swept them again the next year. Now, interestingly enough, in 2019, the Warriors went their 5th straight finals against the Raptors, who were led by Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry, and unbelievably, the Raptors had a massive upset, as season injuries to KD and Durant allowed the Raptors to take advantage and win their first ever NBA title, becoming the first NBA team outside of the United States to win a title. Yes, the Raptors won a title. Of course, the 2020s were a really interesting decade. Of course, the Lakers won the NBA Finals in 2020 against the Heat, giving LeBron James another title. But of course, 2020 was possibly going to be another decade of parity. 2021 was marked by the Bucks winning their 2nd ever title, beating the Suns in 6 games. And unbelievably, it was the first final since 1971 to feature no players who previously won a title. The Nuggets won a title in 2023, winning their very first ever NBA title. The Celtics won their title in 2024, beating the Mavericks. 2025 was the Thunder's first time in OKC, beating the hometown Pacers. in 7. And this year, it's going to shape up to be the Knicks and Spurs. Another new champion's going to be added. So very, very interesting stretch for this year's NBA Finals. It's going to be pretty exciting, of course, for this year. Looking forward to this as well. This year, of course. So let's take a look at this, everyone, and we keep track for the latest content. So here it is. We're just going to be outside of our view for a bit. So we just left Houston, and now we're going to arrive over to. We're going to get into the border with Louisiana. We should be arriving above Shreveport. So we should be getting here soon. And here's Airliners Live. I forgot to get shout-outs. My apologies. I forgot to give you guys all shout-outs while I was there. I didn't pay attention. So, we're going to be arriving into Louisiana very shortly. We got a lot of time, so speaking about the NBA and stuff, I do want to do some bit of the GeoGuessr stuff with you guys. We're going to be in the air for quite a bit of a while. So we're going to be in the air for quite a bit of time. We've got 1,200 nautical miles left to go for this trip. So we've got quite a bit of a while to do some of the things we wanted to do. So yeah, a lot of NBA stuff this week coming up. In terms of other sport events, I do want to talk about. There are been some other sport events and stuff I do want to cover here on the sports related stuff. In terms of other events, for of course the Stanley Cup Finals is going on. Last night, of course, the Hurricanes managed to actually even the series at 1 apiece against the Golden Knights at home. Good win for the Hurricanes, thanks to Seth Jarvis getting one for Carolina. And that's going to set up nicely for a game 3 at Las Vegas. So it should be an exciting series with Vegas and Carolina. Should be fun. In other sports as well, for soccer, of course, or for football, the U.S. looked pretty good in its friendly against Senegal. I was watching the men's national team. So it should be exciting to see. Of course, next week, of course, is the FIFA World Cup. And of course, it is the United States and Paraguay. So we're going to do our next game day flight will be the U.S. versus Paraguay. This will be our next game day flight. We'll be flying into SoFi Stadium. So we'll be doing our game day adventure. And we're going to do a GA trip from Las Vegas into Los Angeles, of course. We'll fly all the way to Northrop Field. We're going to go from Las Vegas to Northrop Field, but we'll mainly go through Las Vegas, and we'll fly through the Colorado River and fly us over to some of the really cool destinations. But I think that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do a game day flight across California and such. I thought that would be nice and fun for a trip, and we'll talk about the U.S. and Paraguay national teams. We'll talk about them. And of course, you all know what I'm cheering for the World Cup, the U.S. I do think Group D is going to be pretty tough for the U.S. national team, but I got faith in the boys. I got faith for the U.S. national team. It's going to be a pretty interesting field because Turkey's really good. Turkey's underrated. Australia's always been pretty good in Asia. And Paraguay's not someone you want to mess with. Like, some of the South American teams are not to be ones to be messed with. Like, Paraguay's the 40th ranked team in FIFA. Australia's 27th. And Turkey's 22nd. It's going to be a pretty evenly matched group. So, I'm very curious. Of course, as for the other hosts for this year's World Cup, Mexico is definitely pretty decent. I think Mexico's group is a bit easier. It's a bit simpler. South Africa is a real big outlier. South Africa, of course. Canada's in a really interesting place. Group B, Canada, I think Canada will definitely get out of this one. Though Switzerland is not to be underestimated, I think Canada will have an easier time than the others on its group. Group C, I think the one who get out of Group C is Brazil and Morocco. I think they'll get out of Group C. For Group A, I think it's going to be, Mexico, and I think South Korea is going to get out of this group. For Group B. D, I have the U.S. and Turkey making out of the Group D. Group E will be Germany and I think the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. F is a tough one, but I'm going to go with the Netherlands and Japan. The Dutch have always been a very solid team. I think the Dutch are going to get through. Group H is without question Spain. It's going to be Spain and either Saudi Arabia or Uruguay, but Spain is definitely getting past this. I mean, the Spanish team is just stacked with talent. I mean, Ferran Torres, Mikel Oyarzabal, if healthy, Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Gavi, Rodri, like, Spain is just stacked with talent. Spain's unbelievably good. But yeah, lots of really big teams. Group I, France and Senegal, I think it's going to be those two. Either Senegal or Norway is going to be second, but I know France is getting past that. The French are just so good. J is really interesting because Argentina's there. Austria's not to be underestimated. Neither is Jordan or Algeria. That's going to be pretty much match. For K, I think the Portuguese are going to make it. Portugal, and I think Colombia, will get past through here too. And then finally, Group L, I think England and Croatia are going to be the two teams, is England and Croatia. That's probably who I think got the group stage. So, lots of stuff going on, of course. So, pretty big stuff going on for all of us. So, I'm going to get some bit of GeoGuessr started for a bit. We'll do some, maybe we'll do something NBA related here. We're going to do, let me go ahead and do the single player community maps. Let's do basketball arenas. Let's do basketball. College basketball arenas, the NBA. We'll do the So we'll do this one. The basketball stadiums for the NBA, of course. We'll do this one. The NBA team locations. We'll do this one. Bit more of a challenge, but I want to do this one. So let's do this. Because this is NBA related. So this one's random locations. So there are 30 teams in the NBA. Of course, made them play here. So I'll be the one to investigate. High Meadows. It looks like somewhere in California. So let's do this one. So 29 different locations, 95. Let's go ahead and do this one. This one's an easier one, but we're going to do something a little easy here today. So this is just mainly something. So this here is, of course, in Cleveland. This is the Cavaliers' home arena. You can see all the different retired numbers. This is the Cavaliers' Quicken Loans Arena. It's now Rocket Mortgage Arena, home of the Cavaliers. So, of course, this is the place that LeBron built, the arena that LeBron James built. And it's down here, Rocket Arena. Oops, built right here. Oh yeah, 5,000 points. Let's see, our next arena. This is the home state of the Golden State Warriors, the Chase Center. Now, of course, Golden State means California. Now, they used to play in Oakland, but this is Chase Center, which is the new home of the Warriors. And that's, of course, they play in San Francisco now. They just moved to the Chase Center, which is not far from Oracle Park. This is Little Caesars Arena. That's Detroit. Because you have both the Red Wings and the Pistons here. They both play here in Little Caesars Arena. I guess the northwest of the ball. Yeah, Little Caesars Arena. This one, of course, is the American Airlines Center in Dallas, actually. This is the American Airlines Center here in Dallas. The other major rival of the Spurs, of course. And our last arena is the Phoenix Suns home arena. This is the home of the Suns. Talking Stick Resort Arena. That's in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. It's down the Mortgage Matchup Center, but yep, that's it. Got 1 point off, but I got it. There you go. One of our community maps, of course. So, of course, I want to do one more before we talk about the Spurs for a bit. So we're just gonna go with um, Let's just this one though. MLB, NFL, NBA. Let's do that. Ah, so this here is, I think this is Levi Stadium here in Santa Clara. It's Santa Clara. There is Levi Stadium. Yes, they don't play in San Francisco. The 49ers actually play in Santa Clara because obviously there wasn't enough space to. Yep, nice guess. Edgar Martinez Drive, Atlantic Street, T-Mobile Park. There it is. That's in Seattle, of course. Mm. Well, I guess that pretty much does that. So we're gonna cancel out the GeoGuessr for a bit. So we're about in terms of distance, of course, we are just about under 1,000, just under right around 1,009 miles. We're just into Arkansas as we speak. We're now in the city of state of Arkansas. So that's where we're here though today. Beautiful scenery out here this morning. Of course, we're going to be in LaGuardia soon enough. Right around 500 knots, of course. So we'll get to arriving here pretty short, within 2 hours, of course. Hmm. beautiful stuff going on here this morning, obviously. We're going to go through into in terms of streams this week, guys, if you don't mind if I tell you guys Nick throughout the week, tomorrow we'll be doing some short hop flying. Out of Japan, we'll go from Matsumoto. We'll go to our Virtual Airlines Japan hub here in Nagoya, and then we'll hop over into Romeo Juliet and Shirahama, right next to the Adventure World theme park. And we'll arrive here as well. So pretty exciting little airport. Should be really neat to do some flying in Japan. Not super long haul flights, but honestly, I think it'd be pretty exciting for some short routes. And then Sunday, of course, in our GA National Park series, we'll be covering Petrified Forest National Park, part 30 of our trip. We're just about halfway done with the series already. That's unbelievable. Really cool stuff, though, going on here. So, yeah, we're doing pretty well. 41 knots of wind pushing through. So, we're going through this pretty well. So, we're going to go ahead and talk about the San Antonio Spurs. They're one of our topics for today. The Spurs, of course, are one of the NBA's most well-known franchises. They've been around they were founded all the way back in 1967 as the Dallas Chaparrals of the ABA. However, they didn't move into San Antonio until 1973. And they're one of the few ABA teams, in fact, that have survived into the NBA after the merger. The only other teams to actually survive the merger still left are the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, the Brooklyn Nets, are the only three other teams that survived. Sadly, of the two other ABA teams in the merger, the Spirits of St. Louis, and most sadly for me, the Kentucky Colonels. I mean, can you imagine a timeline where the Colonels made it to the NBA? As well. But they're one of the most successful franchises in the league. They've won 5 titles in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2014. And as of the 2022-2023 season, the Spurs have had the highest winning percentage among active NBA franchises, as well as the best winning percentage of any Major League franchise in the US and Canada over the past 3 decades. At one point, they even had consecutive 50-win seasons every year, which is absolutely insane. And a lot of it was due to the fact with former head coach Greg Popovich, as well as Spurs icons David Robinson and Tim Duncan. All major parts of what built the Spurs into being one of the NBA's most successful franchises, and been there for pretty consistently a long time. The guy you see here in the picture, of course, to your right, is one of the new stars of San Antonio, the alien himself, Victor Wembanyama, who is literally an alien. He did not come from Earth. They say he came from France, but he actually came from an alien spaceship that crash landed into San Antonio. That's probably the real story that the media don't tell you about. But of course, the Spurs have had a rich franchise history, tons of really talented players in the franchise over many decades. We'll get to talk about those guys later. But the Spurs are very much active parts in the San Antonio community, and many former Spurs are still active here, including David Robinson with the Carver Academy, and George Gervin, the Iceman, during his youth center. And of course, the Spurs have set many NBA attendance records while playing the Alamo Dome, including the largest crowd ever for NBA's final game in 1999, and continue to sell out the smaller Frostbite Center on a regular basis since then. Of course, every single year they took a road trip in 2003 because the Frostbite Center hosts the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo during the month. Known as the Rodeo Road Trip, of course. And whenever the Spurs win a title, of course, they mainly do a lot of the parades or boat trips across the San Antonio Riverwalk. So really cool stuff. The Spurs are a very active part, and that's why the people in San Antonio absolutely love their Spurs. The Spurs are the team of the city. I mean, they're the only major team in the city of San Antonio. So obviously, they got extremely passionate fans. So, absolute incredible fan base and support, obviously. In terms of team colors, they share, in terms of rivalries, of course, and with their rivals, they have plenty of them. The Lakers were a pretty big rival during the late 90s, early 2000s. The Lakers were their big rivals. Thanks to the fact, of course, during that time, the Lakers had Kobe and Shaq, and the Spurs had Tim Duncan, and David Robinson, of course, as well as others. And they met in the playoffs 5 times in 6 seasons, and one of the 2 teams advanced to the finals every year between 1999 and 2005. Was the Lakers and Spurs, and still continuing on for many years. The Spurs and Mavericks have pretty deep roots because both teams have roots in Dallas. If you recall, the Spurs actually were originally from Dallas, but they moved to San Antonio in 1973. As well. But the Mavericks and Spurs were huge rivals, especially during the 2000s, of course, with Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki. Those two are pretty passionate rivals. And of course, they've been big rivals since 1998. But like I said, they met plenty of times in the playoffs, and it's been going back and forth between the Spurs and Mavericks, and mainly the Spurs lead the all-time series between the two. But it should be very interesting, of course. Then, of course, the Phoenix Suns have met since 1992, faced off 10 times in the playoffs. The Spurs won 6, with the Suns winning 4, and one of the more notable moments in the rivalry, including Charles Barkley's game-winning jump shot in 1993. And more. Then you have the Spurs and Rockets, of course, which was renewed in 2017. And of course, obviously, it's another Texas team. And then over the last few years has been the Oklahoma City Thunder, because of course the emergence of the young Thunder squad and the Spurs having Victor Wembanyama. And of course, this past postseason, the last round was absolutely a classic, with the Spurs beating the Thunder in Game 7 last week, which was absolutely incredible stuff, though. That was a lot of fun. definitely a really fun matchup for basketball, of course. Now, in terms of logos and designs, if it's one thing that I do want to note, the Spurs have always wore the classic black, silver, and white uniforms, and it's been their team colors ever since they moved in 1973. Um, their the font is a Euro style font, and the idealized stylized Spur has substituted the letter U, and it's been part of it ever since their relocation. They They used the Fiesta colors of pink, orange, and turquoise they wore from 1989 to 2002. But that covers are now part of the alternates. But they mainly wore those colors all year. At certain times of the year, the Spurs do wear jerseys that say Los Spurs because, of course, of the Latino fans both across home and the U.S. and Latin America. And it makes sense considering that San Antonio has a very large Hispanic population. And the Spurs also have the most players from Latin America across the history of the league. So really cool stuff. This past year, of course, the Spurs released an alternate that featured this. It was a gray uniform that featured the city, a statement uniform with silver base and block San Antonio, becoming the first time the city name was part of the uniform since 1989. But really cool stuff, really neat uniforms, very classic, and definitely pretty rich. And of course, their mascot, by the way, is the Coyote. He's been around since 1983, one of the most famous mascots in NBA history. Really cool stuff, really neat history, and the Spurs got obviously very rich history with all sorts of stuff included. Now, the NBA stadium they play is the Frost Bank Center. It's their home arena. It's been their home arena since 2002. It seats 18,000 for basketball. It seats 19,000 for concerts, and of course, it also used to host ice hockey, but that's not as much anymore. Um, they used to play in the Alamo Dome, which was actually a huge multi-sport facility built to primarily to try and attract an NFL team to San Antonio. But of course, it was far too big and it wasn't really meant for basketball, so they built a new arena here for the center. Of course, this center was built primarily designed for basketball. So, and of course, every year it's hosted the San Antonio Rodeo, the Stock and Rodeo in San Antonio. And as a result, the Spurs had to make long road trips. The Rodeo Road Trip is it called during that time. But it's hosted tons of events. It's hosted WWE events. It's hosted ice hockey matches, WNBA, hosted all that. But the Spurs are going to build a new arena in 2024. And they said the new arena will be ready by 2032, a new downtown arena near the Alamo and Tower of Americas. That will be their new home arena. The current arena, by the way, because the current arena is a bit further away from downtown than they would want it to be. But that's pretty cool stuff. And also, this arena was where Dirk Nowitzki played his final game, of course. Yeah, they play far out into the east is their arena. So they're going to build one right in downtown, which is going to be pretty nice for all the fans. But yeah, the other arenas they played throughout their history, Alamo Dome, of course, they played that from 1993 to 2002. And they briefly played in 2023 and for their 50th anniversary, played a game of the Alamo Dome. And the Alamo Dome also played many other teams and stuff have played the Alamo Dome from time to time. The Canadian Football League San Antonio Texans played here. The IHL San Antonio Dragons. The Saints used to play here for a few games during the 2005 season after Hurricane Katrina, but mainly it's now the home of the UTSA Roadrunners for college football. And they're also quite popular. And they're quite popular here in San Antonio as well for UTSA football. That's also been very popular here too. So pretty nice stuff. And then the last one is, of course, the Hemisphere Arena, which is the San Antonio Convention Center Arena, was mainly what they used to play for. So yeah, pretty interesting history though with the Spurs, of course. Mm, mm, mm. So pretty cool stuff. So we'll get ready to get going here. So we're just past Memphis. Now Memphis, of course, is the home of the Grizzlies. And by the way, Memphis is also one of the smallest markets for the NBA markets. It's actually probably the smallest market in the entire NBA. Um, they're actually the second smallest behind the New Orleans Pelicans as the smallest markets in the entire NBA. So pretty small market, of course. I know there's been a lot of talks about the Memphis Grizzlies relocating. I don't think it's likely to happen. I know a lot of people have rumors of relocating, but I doubt they're going to get relocated. because obviously it's very much a attraction to the city, and more importantly too, a lot of the people in Memphis want to keep the team. Like it's one of the only things about people going to Memphis. They are not moving. So so we'll get ready to move up to our next destination. There we go. So we'll go ahead and get moving to we're now in Tennessee. We're going to be getting into Kentucky pretty soon. In terms of distance, let me show you on the map for where we're at right now. So 895 nautical miles. So this is where we're at right now, outside of Tennessee. We're going to Kentucky. So our flight plan's going to take us through into Cleveland, and then we'll go right into Pennsylvania and stuff. So that's kind of a bit of our flight plan here this morning, of course. So pretty important stuff. In terms of their honors, the team has won 5 NBA championships, most recently in 2014. They were one of the most dominant franchises of the 21st century. They've won 7 conference titles, most recently this past year, of course. But they've won, but that was their first conference title in 12 years, and they've won the division title 23 times. Most of it, of course, was in the 2000s and 2010s. But this is a franchise with a long history of success. In terms of legendary Spurs icons, of course, the Spurs have so many stars to pick from. But if I had to pick their greatest ever player, the greatest player in San Antonio history is without question Tim Duncan. He's without question the single greatest Spur of all time. And he's a one-team guy. He spent all 19 years in San Antonio from St. Croix. He's known as the big fundamental, and he's the greatest power forward the NBA has ever seen. And he was one of the big reasons why the Spurs were so successful during the 2010s. And he played college ball at Wake Forest, first overall selection, and he completely, absolutely was one of the most dominant, successful players ever. I mean, 5-time champion. He won the MVP twice, 3-time Finals MVP, a 15-time All-Star. He went to the All-NBA first team 10 times in his career. He's made All Defensive Team first team 8 times, 7-time All Defensive second team, and of course the dude was incredibly good. And of course, he's also in the Basketball Hall of Fame and College Basketball Hall of Fames, and he was a big part of the United States team in 2004 with the bronze. But one of the greatest players in NBA history. And he wasn't just great offensively either. Not only was he great offensively, Tim Duncan was an incredible defender too. Like he absolutely was a great rebounder and an incredible shot blocker. His only weakness was really his free throw shooting, but it wasn't too bad for a big man. He was just super versatile. Like he's versatile, he's successful, he's quiet, but honestly, but if anything, it doesn't matter. He shows all that in the court, and that tells you about the guy he is. He's just insane, insanely talented guy. Like, and no wonder he's absolutely just consistent. Like I said, you can't argue with a guy like Tim Duncan. Outside of him, of course, is his other the other great big man that San Antonio has. Another guy who's pretty much played for most of his career in San Antonio, David Robinson. Born out of Key West, and of course, he didn't play college ball in some big college. He played his college ball at the U.S. Naval Academy. George Robinson was also selected first in the 1987 draft. However, he didn't play his first game until 1989 because, of course, he was part of the U.S. Navy. But despite having a later start in his career, he became, well, a 10-time All-Star, an MVP in 1995, two-time champion. He even won the Olympic gold medals in 1992-96, and he's now in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And David Robinson was just absolutely ridiculous. That guy can score. He's a scoring machine. He made the All-NBA first team 4 times. He's basically made the All-NBA team for pretty much most of his career. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. He even won a scoring title in 1994, which was, I mean, he had 29 points a game in that year. He won the scoring title. Along with 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks a game. Oh, David Robinson was absolutely ridiculous. In fact, he also scored one time 71 points in a game. Yeah, David Robinson, of course. But yeah, one of the greatest players in NBA history. Absolutely ridiculous. Then, of course, you have Tony Parker, hailing from France. Tony Parker hails from Belgium, actually. Though he came from France, he actually is from Belgium. He actually part of the French league, PSG Racing Basketball. But then he played for the Spurs and basically became one of the best players in Spurs history. He was a huge piece of all the championship teams. He won 4 of the 5 titles of the Spurs and one of their franchise history. 6-time All-Star. He's 3-time All-NBA second team. He's definitely one of the greatest European players the league has seen. And of course, he's part of the Basketball Hall of Fame. And what makes Tony Parker really special as a player was he was a very potent offensive player. He's very quick, lots of layups, and of course his signature teardrop. And he was very active in the paint. And that's why he became so effective too. Like he just knows what to do. He's solid offensively as a scorer and as a defender too. Really good player, really talented guy. Of course, then we have Manu Ginobili. How Ginobili, really interesting guy about him. He was played in Argentina, played in Italy in the NBA. He hails all the way from Argentina. He played several years in Argentina and Italy before he was ever taken the NBA. He was taken the 57th pick in the second round. But he exceeded all expectations because Manu Ginobili was so valuable. He may not be scoring tons of points, but the dude was as invaluable as he is. 2-time All-Star, 4-time NBA champion. He won 6th Man of the Year in 2008. And he had tons of accolades, and that's just NBA. He's won European competitions with the Italian Cup and all that. He won Italian Cup. He won a EuroLeague as well, and he even won the gold medal for the Argentine team in the Summer Olympics in 2004. Like, yeah, the dude is a winner. He's a pure winner. And one of the reasons he's been so good is because he is just clutch. His passion in the game, he was clutch. And he was versatile. He did all sorts of stuff. He was just a selfless guy. That's something you can not ask for something better. And of course, he was also a major flopper too. Then of course, outside him, we have of course the other iconic Spur, George Gervin. The Iceman, one of the great players in NBA history, George Gervin. But of course, his prime was in San Antonio, obviously. And during his time in San Antonio, um, George Gervin became their major scoring machine. Pretty much most of his all-stars have come in San Antonio, all his first teams and stuff. And basically, that's the peak of his career was in San Antonio. The next outside of George Gervin, of course, is Bruce Bowen, who was another part of the team during the 2000s run, and he was an incredible defensive player. Like the dudes that him had made the All NBA defensive teams 8 different times in his career. Incredible defensive player, and very feared defender, and he was the defensive backbone for that team during the 2000s. Then, of course, after him, Victor Wembanyama. Yes, he's the star of the Spurs right now. He is their best player on the team. He's one of the best basketball players in the world right now. Victor Wembanyama. 7'4", out of France, one of the greatest prospects ever, because he is something rare. He's tall. He has incredible agility for a guy his height and his insane skill set. I mean, the dude can literally shoot threes. Imagine a 7'4" guy who could play in the perimeter and shoot threes. Yeah, good luck covering this guy. If he can stay healthy, he could be on a trajectory to be one of the greatest players of all time, and I'm not even kidding. The dude's already a 2-time All-Star. He already won Defensive Player of the Year. He's got a Rookie of the Year. He's absolutely insane, and now he's in the finals too. He's absolutely insane. Wemby's gonna have an insane career ahead of him. Then, of course, we have Kawhi Leonard, who was a big piece of their 2014 NBA Finals, of course. He was a big piece of their 2014 NBA Finals team. Amazing defender. Incredible defense. He was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year during his time in San Antonio. He was also one a big piece of the Finals in 2014. 7-time All-Star. A really talented player. I know he's had a bit of controversy over the last few years in Los Angeles. He couldn't stay healthy, but Kawhi definitely has tons of talent. And there's plenty of other players I can list, but that's just the players I include here for the San Antonio Spurs. So that's kind of my list for the Spurs and their icons and stuff during their franchise. So that pretty much covers the Spurs for a bit. We're just 797 nautical miles away. We're in Kentucky right now. To our left, we can see the city of Paducah. To our west, we flow past Paducah, Kentucky. That is one of the major art city here in the state. It's in the western part of the state, of course. So we'll be getting ready for all of it. I hope you guys are liking this and enjoying the content here on stream with some of the stuff I wanted to show you guys. I hope you enjoyed some of the slides. I put my time and effort looking at them and putting them for you guys to listen. So lots of stuff, of course. But there's tons of things in San Antonio that are really cool to learn. So we're going to go ahead and we're about to arrive into Louisville, Kentucky. We're about to arrive into Evansville. I think we're flying near, I think in the distance is Evansville. This is Southwest Indiana, the largest city in Southwest Indiana. It's the largest city in that area. This is where a lot of the nation's LSTs were built during World War II. This was where the LSTs were built, and also this was where a lot of the P-47s have been built. One-third of the P-47 Thunderbolts built during the war were produced in Evansville, by the way. And the P-47s also, well, the Indiana State Aircraft is the P-47. So we got that bad boy as the state aircraft. But yeah, there's several surviving P-47s, but we have one here in the United States, of course, the Hoosier Spirit. So, yeah, advanced PC heads work. Nice. Nice to hear that, Court. Things are working, but Evansville's really cool. And that's to our north left. There's Evansville down here. Now, straight ahead of us, we should see Owensboro, Kentucky. Now, Owensboro is Kentucky's barbecue capital. Yes, Owensboro has a rich barbecue. Has a rich barbecue heritage. You have two main barbecue ones, Moonlight Barbecue and Old Hickory. Are its two major barbecue, and of course they cook a lot of different food, of course. But they mainly cook a lot of different stuff. But one of the really unique things about Kentucky barbecue and barbecue here um, is that unlike many other parts, they serve mutton, and that's their main specialty here. Barbecue in Owensboro is different because they do slow smoked mutton, and burgoo is what separates Kentucky barbecue from other barbecue parts of the rest of the country. Because burgoo is one of their major soups they serve, and of course mutton. And the reason why they did a lot of mutton, of course, was because Kentucky in this area there was a lot of sheep farming and stuff around this part of Kentucky. They did a lot of sheep farming and stuff, and well, with all that sheep, they had to turn to something, so that's what they did with mutton. And of course, burgoo is basically thick, hearty, peppery Kentucky stew with meats and vegetables. But yeah, Owensboro definitely is very unique in the barbecue world. Yes, but that's why. But that's what makes it very different. A lot of the but the way they cook mutton there on courts is they mainly they use hickory wood, and they use acidic basing combination of water, vinegar, and salt and peppers that break down the meat and remove some of that taste of mutton, because normally mutton, um mainly the taste of it kind of puts people off, of course, is much richer, earthier, and bolder version of land. It's more gamey. So in order to actually taste it, of course, they had to do it that way. And help tame the gamey flavor of it. So that's why they do it the way they did. So they can temper down the mutton, of course. But still really unique though. It really sets it apart from some of the other ones too. I want to go down there sometime and try it. So it's not bad. It's not bad. It's actually good. A lot of people. It's very, like I said, it doesn't taste so bad about it, from what I've known. Hey, I had weird stuff too. Trust me. It's like lamb, but it's a bit richer and more mature. But like I said, it's worth tasting it to give it a try. I get it. It's not for everyone, but it's definitely its specialty, and it's something to try. So, so we're finally in my home state of Indiana. Of course, we're in my home state, Indiana. We're finally crossing my home state. Yeah, my home state for basketball, of course. It's got their own NBA team, the Pacers, of course, my home state's team, the the blue and yellow Pacers. Um, they did not have a great year. They had one of the worst records in the NBA this season. And for their troubles, well, the Pacers don't even get their first round pick next year. Um, so pretty interesting stuff, of course. So we have, so we're not too far away, guys. We got still 700 miles left to go till we finally get into the Big Apple, of course. So let's do some bit of GeoGuessr. We haven't done. Let me go ahead and do that GeoGuessr thing. We couldn't do last, so let's see if we can do it again this time. Hmm. let's do college football stadiums. They said this is easy, so let's go ahead and play. Still loading. So let's see. Oh, this is Missouri State. This is Missouri State. I think it's Springfield. Yeah, it's Springfield, Missouri State. Yeah, right here, Missouri State. Right here. Oh my gosh, I was right. Okay. So that Missouri State. This one is Coastal Carolina. That's not far from Myrtle Beach. So I think it's South Carolina. There's Myrtle Beach. It's in Conway, if I remember correctly. It is. Conway. And I think it's. Yeah, it's actually it's in Conway. It's just a bit. There it is. University Boulevard. Got it. Give me a second to. This one is the Greyhounds. So I'm gonna have to do some roaming around this area. Greyhound. Oh, Indianapolis. University of Indianapolis. Where is this one at? Indianapolis. Ah, right here. Right here. Yep, there we go. Okay, two more. This one is Wilkes University. Wilkes Barre University. I think it's up here. Wilkes Barre. Wilkes Barre. I know it's Wilk. I think it's Barre. Okay, I was just 1 mile off. It's across the river. Okay, last one for this round. This one is welcome to the Weevils. Okay, so Weevils is which university is this? Convoy Leslie Cotton Bowl Stadium. GAC. Okay, this is an Arkansas school because there's Arkansas's border, so it's in Arkansas. Is it Arkansas A&M? So I need a final location of the city. Forestry Park. This is Arkansas A&M. So let's see. It's in Arkansas somewhere. Central Arkansas. No. How about Pine Bluff? Southeast Arkansas. Henderson State. Um, I'm gonna guess that this one's in Pine Bluff. No, that's University of Arkansas. No, it's Arkansas. Yeah. University of Arkansas Fort Smith. No, that's not it. El Dorado? Oh, somewhere around here. I'm just gonna pick this. Oh, okay. So it's further northeast. It's a okay Monticello. Okay. So I got that one. I guess we can do one more for now. Let's do one. Let's do this again. Let's see which one we get now. Okay, this one. This is Wingate University. Wingate. Charlotte and Rottingham. So, so apparently that is is North Carolina's Road 74. Let's do this. Okay, it's a bit further up, but we got that one. Oh, I know this one. This is Albertson Steam. That's Boise, Idaho. What gives it away? The blue turf. Blue turf gives it away. This one is Sanford Stadium. This is Georgia, and I know exactly what that is. That's Athens, Georgia. It's east of Atlanta. And here it is. 5K. Okay, this one's a bit more tricky. Oh, that's Abilene Christian University. That's Abilene, Texas, which is right here. P. Shotwell Stadium, and I think we're on the road. Abilene Christian, so northeast of the state. Northeast of the state. Nice guess. All right. Oh crap! It failed to load. Oh, great. Failed to load. Well, I guess I'll take a break from that for a bit. So, yeah, that's weird. So, yeah, we just left Indiana. Now we're all the way in Ohio. 572 nautical miles to New York LaGuardia Airport. So, So we're getting through to Ohio. We should be seeing to our right. If you look to our right, this is Dayton. You guys all know about Dayton, Ohio. You can find the Air Force Museum to the northeast of the city. This was mainly the city of the Wright brothers, of course. This is where they were from before they went to Kitty Hawk. But Dayton is much more than that, than just being for the airplanes. It's actually had many other inventors, including the Dayton Project, which was a branch of the larger Manhattan Project to develop the plutonium triggers used in early atomic bombs. Um, and of course, after all, aviation was born from Dayton. Nowadays, it's more services with healthcare and stuff. Mm. So here's Dayton, of course. Rich aviation history. It's also got a lot of tourism stuff, but mainly tons of museums. Of course, the National Museum of the Air Force is located at Wright Air Base, the largest and oldest military aviation museum in the world. And if you never got a chance to visit here, it's definitely well worth checking the National Museum of the Air Force. It's definitely well worth visiting if you're an aviation person, especially for military aviation. They have so many planes in the museum. There's so many planes, and there are some very famous aircraft um in the museum, including the Memphis Belle, which was used for some of the motion pictures. Um, they also got the Apollo 15 command module Endeavour, one of 4 surviving B-36 Peacemakers, the only surviving XB-70 Valkyrie, and of course the famous boxcar that dropped the Batman atomic bomb on Nagasaki. So many famous aircraft all over in Dayton. Rich history, of course, here in Dayton, Ohio. Like I said, so Cleveland. So we'll get talking about the Knicks once we arrive to our next point. We'll talk briefly about the New York Knicks for a bit. Let's go ahead and cover our next slide. The New York Knicks are actually full name is the Knickerbockers, though everyone calls them the Knicks, based in Manhattan of New York City. Play in the Eastern Conference, and they mainly play their games at the historic Madison Square Garden, which they also share with the New York Rangers of the NHL and are one of the 2 NBA teams in the city of New York. In fact, they're only one of 2 teams from the original 2 NBA teams still located in its original city, along with the Celtics. And it was established back by Ned Irish in 1946. And was the founding member of the Basketball Association of America and merged with the National Basketball League. Of course, the Knicks were most successful, however, during the 60s and 70s. Under Red Holzman, helped became the Knicks to win both their NBA championships in 1970 and 73. Of course, the Knicks then had a successful era in the 90s. However, they never quite got the championship in the 90s because, of course, the Spurs and the Rockets and Spurs denied them their championships. And of course, since 1999-2000, the Knicks have struggled to regain their former successes. This year might finally shape up to be different this time around. They just made the finals this year, and they already took game 1. So if the Knicks could take game 2 in San Antonio tonight, oh boy, where do I even begin with the momentum? At home, it could set up the Knicks for a really strong finals for them. They've won the last 15 straight games, and I think if they do it again, who's to say anyone could stop the Knicks? I mean, the Spurs can definitely challenge it, but man, that momentum is going to be tough to stop. So, yeah, the Knicks are definitely shaping up to be a really big team. And the crazy thing about the Knicks, when they get to the finals, of course, was they built their team really well. Of course, their main star, of course, is Jalen Brunson, and he wasn't even a top draft pick. He was a 33rd overall pick, 6'2", but he was a winner. He already won championships. He was already two-time national championship winner at Villanova, so you already have a proven winner at Villanova. Of course, this team also has Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, um, Josh Hart, who's been another winner too, and of course they got Karl-Anthony Towns. But this is a team that's played really well so far. So, really interesting stuff, of course. In terms of logos and uniforms, the Knicks have always wore the colors blue and orange, and it's been around since the team was founded back in 1946. Mainly their home uniforms are white with blue and orange trim, and away are mainly blue with orange. Of course, in 1964, they introduced their classic iconic logo for the next 3 decades. It's the one you actually see here in the slide. It was designed by Bud Friedman. The Knicks superimposed over a brown basketball the classic round ball logo of the New York Knicks. And pretty much the logo was unchanged. And the Knicks unveiled a uniform that would stay for 3 decades with New York and serif lettering and in orange as well. And it was worn during their championship seasons. Of course, then afterwards in the 90s, they updated the logo with the words Knicks in futuristic font imposed over a basketball with a silver triangle accentuating the look. And of course, they even added black as an accent color in 1996. But of course, in 2012, they updated the logo to remove black from the scheme and still use their previous uniforms for the new era. And they now put their team uniforms more similar to the current championship era uniforms. And it's been pretty good luck for the Knicks, but mainly have been worn their classic uniforms, of course. And they've worn several special uniforms, including wearing green for St. Patrick's Day, and the Noche Latina uniforms. They've worn some special ones. As well. Some pretty special little uniforms, of course, and they've also been one of the first NBA teams to wear throwback uniforms in 1997. And they wore quite a few throwbacks, of course. But pretty cool stuff for the Knicks, obviously. In terms of their arena, they play in the oldest arena in the NBA, the Madison Square Garden, the oldest arena in the league. It's not the first Madison Square Garden. This is actually the 4th venue to bear the name. The first 2 were located on Madison Square itself, and it was opened in 1879 to 1890, and then the other one from 1890 to 1926. The one currently built here opened back in 1968, and it's the oldest major sporting facility in the New York metro area. Yes, this is the oldest sporting venue in the city, actually. But this thing hosts just about everything you can imagine. Ice hockey, basketball, boxing, mixed martial arts, concerts, ice shows, circus, wrestling, and other forms of entertainment. And it's hosted to tons of other teams, not just the Knicks, but it's also hosted the New York Liberty and the New York Rangers that played here. But in addition, it's also hosted the St. John's Red Storm of St. John's University. It's hosted the New York Apples of World Team Tennis. The New York Cosmos even played here. The North American Soccer League. And even arena football and lacrosse have played here too. So yeah, lots of different sports and events have played here too. And of course, Madison Square Garden has also hosted all sorts of events. It's It's hosted all sorts of stuff. In fact, it hosts more concerts than any venue in New York City. Yes, there are so many things held in this venue. There's almost nothing this venue can't do. It's a very, very special place for for sport events, of course. So, pretty big stuff. And then in terms of their rivalries, of course, the Knicks have had several of them, but by far their most notable rival are the Boston Celtics, for obvious reasons, because of course, not only are the two of the three original teams remain from the original 1946 NBA, but their rivalry stems from the fact that the cities of New York and Boston were other big rivals too in other sports, particularly the Yankees and Red Sox. And they're also pretty close, 190 miles apart, and have met multiple times in the playoffs, of course. But yeah, Knicks Celtics is definitely one of the NBA's most well-known rivalries, and this one has a rich history too. Um, Lots of stuff, of course. Then, of course, you have the Brooklyn Nets, who are both in the same city, of course, in the same division, and they're the closest rival. The Knicks play in Manhattan, the Nets play in Brooklyn, and similar to that of the other New York City teams, mainly the Yankees and Mets, due to their proximity, of course. Now, of course, the Nets didn't always play in Brooklyn. They used to play in New Jersey, but they relocated into Brooklyn um, over a decade ago. But really cool stuff. And then, of course, you have the Bulls, which were a huge rivalry back in the 90s with the Patrick Ewing and John Starks versus the Bulls, Jordan and Pippen, of course, as well as the reputation of the team's respective cities, made this a pretty bitter rivalry during the time of the 80s and 90s. Of course, it was dormant for the 2000s, but nowadays the rivalry returned back in the 2010s. Of course, if you ask most Knicks fans, one team they really hate are the Pacers. Yes, all the way from Indiana. You would think, how would a team from Indiana be a rivalry with New York? Well, of course, the playoffs. You see, they met in the playoffs 6 times from 1993 to 2000. And mainly, it stems from Reggie Miller and Knicks fan Spike Lee. And of course, Reggie Miller have been his clutch performances against the Knicks, especially in the infamous 1994 final, of course. Was absolutely one of the craziest NBA finals, of course. But these two absolutely become bitter rivals. And of course, they met in last year's conference finals, and of course, the Pacers beat the Knicks there too. And lastly, the Miami Heat are another rival, and they mainly become one of the 90s, and then they met again in 2012. So that's a little bit about the Knicks for a bit. There's 2 final slides I want to cover, but I'm going to cover those a little bit later as we get closer to New York. So to our left, I think we see Sandusky. That is where you can find the amusement park, Cedar Point. There's the Cedar Point Amusement Park. That's where you have all your massive roller coasters and stuff. But if you want to have a fun time. Really cool stuff from around here. So. So down ahead of us, of course, is the city of Cleveland, Ohio. One of the most notable cities in Ohio, of course. Now, one thing about Cleveland, of course, um, Cleveland, it's known as the Forest City, and also due to the fact, well, of course, the Forest City mainly stems from all the forest and sophisticated society built in the forest. But Cleveland used to be a major city for a lot of companies, mainly for a lot of companies made their base here in Cleveland. Cleveland used to be a very industrial city. It was one of the nation's largest cities at one point during the 20th century. And it was mainly did a lot of workers and stuff. But of course, after some industrial restructuring stuff, Cleveland helped clean up the city, of course. And Cleveland was also where the Cuyahoga River burning happened in 1969. It brought the American environmental movement happened around Cleveland. Nowadays, the city has been much more revitalized since the 80s. And nowadays, it's much more revitalized. More diverse economy, and gained a national reputation as a center for healthcare and arts here in Cleveland. But yeah, the city's changed a lot since the deindustrialization over the years. So there is Cleveland. There's Hopkins Airport below us. From above, we can see some of the stuff here. So we can take a look from above. So there's downtown Cleveland, Ohio. So really cool stuff here, of course. As we move down over this direction, we should be arriving in the Big Apple pretty soon. So we're gonna move in closer. So we're not too far. We're now just 389 nautical miles. Let's see our top of descent, our VNAV. So let's check VNAV. We're about 268 nautical miles, so 388 minus 268. We're about, that'd be 120 nautical miles to the destination when we do top of descent. I appreciate you guys for staying around for this stream. I really do massively appreciate all you guys from the raid who stayed around here today. Really appreciate you guys for this flight. This is one of the longer airliner flights I've done on stream here. I know usually don't do airliner streams. I keep things within 2 hours, but for today with the NBA finals and stuff, I wanted to do this. So that's what I'm going to do here today. Really cool stuff. But yeah, Cleveland's a neat city. Tons of really neat stuff. Lots of food. Rich food culture. It's a great theater and music city as well. Rich history of music city. Like I said, Cleveland's a very underrated city. I know Cleveland has had crime areas too, but it's not nearly as bad as it once was. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna be heading down to um, here as well. We'll be arriving in the beautiful state of Pennsylvania. Um, Pennsylvania does have an NBA team. The Philadelphia 76ers, one of the most historic franchises in the NBA. That team, of course, has several famous players I know of. More recent years, you have Allen Iverson, of course, Joel Embiid. Of course, their most famous players, Julius Erving, obviously, and Moses Malone are some of the most famous players to put on a 76ers uniform. So, let's go ahead and let's finish the rest of the slides here, and we'll do some more time. In terms of their team honors, the Knicks have won 2 NBA titles in 1970 and 73, 5 conference titles, most recently in 2026. The previous one was 1999. So the Knicks are in the NBA Finals. 8 division titles, most recently 2013, and they even won the NBA Cup this past season, beating the Spurs. So it's also a rematch of the NBA Cup final. But yeah, that's going to be the NBA Cup. Now, in terms of their iconic players and their most iconic individuals, um, they have had many stars over the decades. Their single greatest star, in my opinion, is Walt Frazier. He is the reason I put Walt Frazier number 1 is he won 2 NBA titles for the Knicks. He won both their championships, and that's what puts him ahead number 1. But Walt Frazier, hailing from Southern Illinois, 5th overall pick by the Knicks, and played for pretty much all but 3 seasons in New York. And and the dude was an absolute stud. 2-time NBA champion, 7-time All-Star, 4-time NBA All-First Team. He made the defensive first team 7 times in his career. One of the great defenders in the league. And of course, he is still involved with the Knicks branch. And he's still an iconic legend of the club team. And even after his years as a player, he went to broadcasting. And guess what? He's part of the Knicks Knicks games along with Mike Breen of the MSG Network. So Walt Frazier is been still with the Knicks after all these years. He's definitely a Knicks icon and a legend. One of the greatest players to ever put on a Knicks uniform. Now, of course, statistically, the greatest Knick is Patrick Ewing, hailing out of Georgetown, of course, out of the University of Georgetown from Washington, D.C., born in Jamaica, actually. And he never won a national title. He went he actually did win a title in 1884. And then he became part of the Knicks, their first overall pick in the 1985 draft. And he stuck around for the Knicks from 1985 to 2000 before playing the last 3 seasons of his career with the Sonics and the Magic. But Patrick Ewing, definitely one of the most iconic big men of the 1990s and one of the great centers of all time. And he was part of the Dream Team for the U.S. Olympics. And to put his accolades is pretty impressive. 11-time All-Star, All-NBA First Team in 1990, as well as 6 All-NBA Second Team appearances, 3-time All-Defensive Second Team, Rookie of the Year, and part of the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams. Definitely an incredible talent. And Ewing's definitely one of the greats to suit up for the Knicks. Another legendary Knick, Willis Reed, is another legendary Knick. Along with Frazier, had won 2 NBA championships. He was the MVP in 1970, 7-time All-Star. He made the All-NBA First Team in 1970, as well as the All-NBA All-Defensive Team, and even won Rookie of the Year in 1965. And he is part of the NBA Basketball Hall of Fame in 1982. And get this, he's actually, in fact, until Jokic won the MVP in 2021, he was the only player drafted in the second round to win the MVP. So incredible talent. Huge legend for Knicks. He played for the Knicks his entire playing career, and he was a long-time coach and executive for the NBA. In the NBA. So, rich history, of course, with Willis Reed. Then we have Dick McGuire. One of the retired numbers of Dick McGuire. Definitely one of the more well-known players in franchise history. He was one of the NBA's first stars of the NBA during the 1940s and 50s, and he was one of the premier guards in the NBA in the 50s. He played for 11 seasons, 8 of which with the Knicks and 3 with the Pistons. And he was the NBA's leading in assists during his rookie year, and he was an NBA All-Star 7 times in his career. And of course, he was also retired by the Knicks. His number 15 is probably retired in the rafters in New York. But of course, a more recent star is Carmelo Anthony. As one I put up here, he's definitely a Knicks icon during his 2000s. He didn't originally play in New York. He was actually born in New York City from Brooklyn. Played his college ball at Syracuse. He was actually played for pretty much most of his career in Denver. However, then he joined the Knicks in 2011. And he played really well in New York during his time, including setting up a single game scoring record, 62 points in 2014. And the dude was a 10, and most of his All Stars came in New York. And I think the peak of his career came in New York when a scoring champion, 10-time All Star, All NBA second team twice, 4-time All NBA third team 4 different times, and just an all around great scoring machine. Definitely one of the more iconic Knicks of the 21st century. Some of the other ones, and then one interesting what if, Bernard King. Very interesting what if for Bernard King. His peak was actually in New York, and Bernard King was an absolute scoring machine. 4-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA All-First Team. However, his peak was in New York, and he became an absolute scoring machine. However, what ended up damaging his career was an infamous leg injury in his right leg, and it torn his anterior cruciate ligament. And of course, it was a career-altering injury that completely altered his career forever. But one of the great what-ifs in Knicks history. Right now, you have the current star, Jalen Brunson, who I put him here because, of course, he originally was part of the Maverick squad for a few years, but then he traded New York, and he's become one of the best point guards in the NBA right now. And he's broke through to become an absolute star for the Knicks. And I mean, if he gets a title this year, Brunson would absolutely be one of the icons of the franchise already. He would be above so many other players. And then you have Earl Monroe, who was one of the game's first stars in the 50s. Him along with Dick McGuire. Earl Monroe was a big part of the Knicks teams during the 70s. Thanks to the fact of his encore success and flashy style, made him one of the great NBA players of all time. And there'll be plenty more icons, but these are just the ones I wanted to include here on this channel. So that's it, everyone, and that covers all of our slides today. So, of course, we're just 279 nautical miles from the Big Apple. And I bet you guys all probably know about New York City, obviously. It's the nation's biggest city. It was originally New Amsterdam, of course. There are 5 different boroughs in the New York City metro area. And of course, one very big thing is that New York is really big. And there are 5 boroughs in New York: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. So, really cool stuff, of course. But yeah, we're now getting to Pennsylvania. So, we're doing pretty good, guys. Going through all this. In terms of the playoffs and stuff, tonight is going to be a very tough one tonight for the NBA. I'm cheering for as much as I hate pain me as a Pacers fan, but I think the Knicks are probably going to win the finals. If they take game 2, they're pretty much set for the rest of the finals. Because I know San Antonio is a tough place to play. If they get another win, I don't think who's going to stop the Knicks from just taking care of business here tonight. Big game, of course. So. Mm. We're going to move this forward, of course. Um, so next week's probably going to be USA Paraguay. We're going to cover the U.S. and Paraguay national teams. In honor of the World Cup, of course. Um, we'll talk about some of their most famous players, not only just their current roster, but we'll talk about um, some of their more well-known players, of course. The cap players with the most caps, and some of the most talented players to ever play for the Paraguay national team. So we'll talk about that for both the U.S. and Paraguay teams this year. Mm. So, so we'll go ahead and get ready, prepare for landing. So we don't have that much far left to go. 100 nautical miles to top of descent. So we're just 100 nautical miles away from top of descent. So we're going to make our way to LaGuardia. So we're going to continue moving forward, obviously. So we're getting ready to go to LaGuardia. If you guys know about LaGuardia, of course, and LaGuardia is in Queens. It mainly does domestic flights, but also limited international destinations. It's the third busiest New York airport after Kennedy and Newark, and the 19th busiest in the United States. Um, while the airport is strictly a hub for above American Delta, commercial service is strictly governed by unique regulations, including a curfew, slot system, and perimeter rule to prohibit most nonstop flights or from destinations greater than 1,500 miles. Throughout the 2010s, it was criticized for outdated facilities, inefficient air operations, and poor customer service. So they had to now do reconstruction of the infrastructure to make it more up to date. So, so technically, you could do a flight from San Antonio to New York, but with how far we're flying, about 1,500 nautical miles, it kind of breaks the perimeter rule. here we go, guys. We're going to be closer to descent. So, beautiful mountains here. Got some pretty big peaks and stuff here. Really cool. Yeah, we fly pretty much across the country. You know, the alternative to this series, of course, was there was also an alternative for us to fly from Las Vegas to Carolina for the Stanley Cup final, but obviously that would be an even longer flight. So that's why I picked this one today. It is a much shorter trip. So here we go, Big Apple. We're on our way to the Big Apple. Should be quite a bit of a um, landing, obviously. So here we go, guys. Top of the descent. This should be an interesting approach into LaGuardia. Um, the largest, the largest of the 767s are the largest ones to land at LaGuardia. 767-400. So yeah, the large one's the 767-400 is the biggest plane that has landed here. So I think the 777 freighter could, because technically it's not passengers, it's freighter. So they don't carry the same load. So here we go. So here we go, guys. Top of descent's coming shortly. We got top of descent, so we're going to finally get down. I hope we can get there, land safely. We're going to be landing on runway 22 today. 7,000 foot runway. I'm going to have to set the brakes maybe max, just in case, because just be on the safe side. Just to be on the safe side. Oh, we're just 7% of fuel left, so we're doing pretty good. So here we go. We're sitting down into New York LaGuardia. This is Allentown to our right. This is Allentown, one of the major cities in the Lehigh Valley area that stretches all across around this area, which includes like Reading and all that, Bethlehem, Easton. So we're going through this pretty quickly. Hmm. So we're doing pretty well. Once we get through Lehigh Valley, we should be going over into here as well. We might see a couple airports. Mainly, we might be seeing. We might be seeing JFK when we get down there, of course. Now we're also going to be doing. We're going to be back in this area again in about a month or two. In 2 months, 1 or 2 months, when the World Cup final happens in New Jersey, at the MetLife Stadium. We're going to be doing an airliner flight into Teterboro from my home airport in JVY. So we'll fly over to the Teterboro. So here we go. So should be a nice landing here. Mm. Mm. So here we are, New York metro areas in the distance. I think we see JFK on the distance, is John F. Kennedy International. Now, this one is the busiest airport in the New York area. So here it is, guys, Breezy Point. Not far from Coney Island, of course. there's Coney Island down here. If you guys know what Brighton Beach is, that's Coney Island. Not just the beach, but it's also where you find theme parks, amusements, Luna Park, Coney Islands, of course. So yeah. Of course, not far from here is JFK. That's the big New York airport. Yeah, look at the Big Apple here. To our left, we can see the Statue of Liberty. That's to our left. That was given to the United States by the French for the centenary. Ellis Island. This was where a lot of the immigration stuff happened here at Ellis Island. This is where a lot of the nation's immigrants ended up here. And this, and to our right here, this Governor's Island. So we're finally into Brooklyn. So yeah, Big Apple. So here it is. New York JFK is right here. The big New York airport here in the Big Apple. So we're about to arrive into here very shortly. So should be an interesting landing, of course. So we'll start slowing down a bit once we get closer to the runway, obviously. Yeah, look at that. That's New York City. The Big Apple right around the background here. So very excited to do this landing. I hope we can get this down safely, obviously. Should be an interesting landing. I know it's not going to be easy with a big plane such as this, obviously. This is going to be a tough landing, but I think we got this one. So here we go. Last landing. Yep, we're getting closer to LaGuardia. Here we go. Here we go, guys. We're about to approach. Not exactly straight on approach. We're going to have to be very careful about this. It might even be a pretty rough landing for all I know. So, pretty nice landing. So here it goes, guys. There's the runway down here. Once it gets a little closer, I'll turn off the autopilot, and I'm going to turn off autopilot, steer this thing closer. Decent glide slope. Go. And she's down. Break, 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 break. Negative 341, not bad. A little bit on the rougher side, but hey, she's down. Not bad at all. We'll just park her right here in one of the other little terminals. We'll park there. Not bad at all, guys. Not bad. Let's go ahead and parking brake. PMGG setup. We're going to go ahead and do cold and dark. So I can go ahead and get this low. So welcome to LaGuardia, everyone. Yes, as crazy as it sounds, I did manage to get a 777 freighter down here. Well, not too bad, honestly. Could have done much worse, honestly. So guys, thank you all again from Airliners Live for the raid. For all those who sticked around, thank you all so much for staying around here. I know this was quite a long flight. So I hope you guys enjoy your trip. We're going to go say hello to a different streamer. I think we're going to raid Captain Rock Savage. We're going to raid his stream here today. So I think we're going to go ahead and raid him. So guys, take care everyone and have a great rest of the day. We'll see you tomorrow in Japan. So take care guys and see you soon. Goodbye everyone and have a great rest of your day.